All right, what's going on, everyone? Coming again with another video here, kind of continuing I guess you can call it series. It's really what I'm going to focus on, which is playing a lot of these kind of older tanks that have been around in the game for a long, long time. How they were when they were released, how they played back in the day, how and if they've been changed, and kind of how they're holding up in 2026. First video is a T-32. This is one of its stablemates at Tier 8 for heavy tanks. It is, well, the iconic Tiger II. This vehicle right here is loved, it's hated, it's frustrating, it's awesome. It's really one of the most iconic vehicles in the game, and it has changed in some pretty significant ways, believe it or not, since its release back in the day. So, before I really talk too much about it, I will say I mentioned it briefly in the initial video. The Tiger 2 was my first tier at heavy tank once the game went, I guess, live, right? No more beta. Um, and I went up this line because the progression of the guns felt a lot better than the American heavies at the time, just because the T-32, as good as the tank itself was, it really was let down by having the same gun as the previous tier. And I took a look at this thing and saw they got a gun with 225 millimeters of penetration. Sorry about these blackout sections here in the replay. By the way, not really sure what's going on if that's OBS or whatever, but um, saw that this tank had 225 pen and the next tank had 246 pen, and the progression just felt a lot better considering the tier 7 German heavy had more penetration than the American tier 8 heavy. So this was what I had my eye on. And I finally got this machine after going through the Tiger in those few months after the game went live, coming out of beta. And I'll remember my first game, and it's hard to forget this, unfortunately, but my first game was on Cliff, tier 10 battle. First tier 10 battle on the live version of the game because, again, first tier 8 tank I ever got was this. Started with the south spawn, went ahead and took my way over to the eastern side of the lighthouse to go ahead and brawl it out on the heavy corner. Um, Probably not a great idea to just charge forward, but again, I was still new to the game. We all kind of were. And I remember turning the corner and finding this really kind of weird looking tank with a really big gun. That is the FV215B183, which has also been here since the game was released. And well, I started aiming at him, and he one-shot me. He sent me back to the garage so fast. I had no clue what that tank was about. I hadn't really done, a lot of fighting against tier 10s, even in the 360 beta. I was just going a bunch of different lines, not too high in the actual tiers during the beta. So that was my introduction to tier 8 and more so tier 10, and that's still a common occurrence in 2026. Unfortunately, running into a Death Star pretty much every tier 10 game. It's very popular, and it hurts. So that was my introduction to this tank, and I didn't have a great first opinion of it. Kind of hard to have one after that experience, but this tank's always been pretty strong. So when the game released, it was America, it was Britain, and it was Germany. And of the three heavy tanks, you had the um, Carnarvon, which was the British, the T-32, which was the American, and then this thing for the Germans. What did this thing bring to the table? Well, it had the best kind of hull armor. The T-32 pre-buff was for kind of tier 7, 7.5 hull armor. This thing had 150 millimeter upper plate, sloped back fairly well. Huge upgrade from the Tiger 1 for sure, Um, and 80 millimeters of side armor, which was thicker than both the others at the time, so you could actually side scrape fairly well. And a really weak lower plate, but that was kind of the curse that you had. That was your cross to carry, so to speak, with this machine. You had to keep that lower plate hidden, and you still do today. So, um, it's solid hull armor combined with the best tier 8 heavy tank gun. This gun, uh, before any changes, 225 pen, phenomenal accuracy, decent enough aim time, 320 alpha, good shell velocity. I mean, just when you compare it to the Carnarvon, it's kind of pew pew 20 pounder gun, which didn't have a great rate of fire. It's not like the Carnarvon Action X these days with almost 3,000 DPM, right? This was I actually think the Tiger II had more DPM than the Carnarvon while having almost 100 more alpha at launch. Carnarvon wasn't very good back in the day. And then the T32 just had really bad pen, or at least the Carnarvon had 226 with that 20 pounder. The T32 was stuck behind at 198. So this had the best tier 8 heavy tank gun, no question about it. In my opinion, probably the best all around tier 8 heavy at the time. And then we started getting more and more nations introduced. So as time went on, everyone knew how to kill a Tiger II. And its biggest weakness, which I didn't really mention, was the fact that when it came to its armor, the lower plate wasn't the only weak spot. The biggest weakness of the tank, in my opinion, it was actually that turret front. It was only 185 millimeters, and it's flat. It is super flat. Maybe you have like 5-10 degrees of sloping on it. That's basically irrelevant. Most shells fired at you, the normalization is going to negate most of that. And what that meant is that any tank that you're fighting head on, even a tier lower in a lot of cases, could shoot you right in the face. Yeah, you had the angled cheeks. Yeah, you had the little kind of gun collar in the center that was really thick control. But realistically, it just wasn't good enough. You were going to take a lot of damage. You didn't need hyper penetration to kill a Tiger II. That was this tank's bane. Is if you could shoot somebody, they could penetrate you, and that's a real burden to have as a heavy tank. So as time went on, this tank really did kind of get power crept, and um, being one of the OGs, just like a lot of other vehicles, the Tiger II was buffed, and the very first thing they did, or the first thing I'll mention anyways, is they buffed the turret. It went from 185 to 245. You almost have the same armor as the E75. Okay, I think that has 254. But you're in the same ballpark, and I can't express how that changes how you can approach playing this tank, because you can actually be comfortable hold down, especially in a tier 8 game, fighting other tanks. I mean, you're going to see right here. I think this Carnarvon's a bot, unfortunately. So whatever. But I'm fighting two other tier 8 tank destroyers. The T28 prototype, I know for a fact, he's got the top gun and he has 248 millimeters of penetration. If I was in a pre-buff Tiger II, he could pen me right in the front every single time. Now I'm a bit above him. He's got to aim up a little bit. He's got to rely on penetration rolls. It's not a good shot to take anymore at the front of a Tiger II's turret. The other buffs they gave it, at some point, I'm not sure if it was the same round of buffs, but they did buff its health. You can see I got 1700 health. That is a very healthy tank at tier 8. 1700 is a lot more than some tier 9s have. That's like tier 9 medium tank destroyer kind of hit points. Going to go ahead and swap to the APCR here to deal with this guy. Sorry for the gold spam, pal, but armor just doesn't mean much, unfortunately, in this game. So they buffed its health. They also buffed its upper front plate, which was actually really, really nice because 150 slope back, it was okay against tier 8s, but the problem is a lot of tier 9s and tier 10s with 250 pen, we'll call it, could kind of go through your upper front plate, even if you angled it a bit, right? It was not strong enough. So they went from 150 to 160 millimeters on that. And that made a huge change. It might not sound like a lot, but it makes it so much more consistent and much, much less of a rewarding endeavor to shoot at the upper front plate, especially if the driver's angling it to some degree. This upper front plate's good now. Tier 10 tank destroyers, people firing premium heat, yeah, they could still embarrass you, but at the end of the day, heat and premium ammo kind of makes a lot of armor in the game irrelevant. Saw a really good bounce off the turret face there from his gun. So it gives you usable and workable armor. And then the last buff they gave this thing, surprisingly enough, the thing that I think didn't really need a buff about this vehicle was the gun. Like I said earlier, this was, I think, for my money, the best tier 8 heavy tank gun, certainly at release. And even as more tanks got introduced, I still thought it was probably still maybe the best, one of the best. I mean, you had the French with an autoloader. The Chinese with the 110 had a different kind of gun. It was not as good still, And to this day, I still think this is maybe the best tier 8 heavy tank gun. And they gave it 360 alpha damage. And it's so strange because The thing that kind of kept the Russians in balance for a lot of the time was the fact that they got horrible gun handling, horrible aim time, crap accuracy. They just hard to use, but man, they hit hard. 390 alpha on the IS-3 and the IS for instance, and the other tanks had good gun handling, like the Tiger II or the Carnarvon, and had a lot less alpha. And it was kind of balanced. Russians wanted to trade one for one. These tanks wanted to kind of abuse positioning and either go hold down against the Russians or trade two for one if they could. The game's over here, by the way. I'm not going to go try to hunt down a Maushin, so I can just kind of sit here and cap out. Still a decent game though. 3.4k damage, 3 kills. Pretty good brawl with those tank destroyers. Just wanted to show off the armor a bit, but I think when they buffed the gun to 360 alpha, they really kind of neutered the Russians in a way because why for 30 extra alpha damage, why are you going to have a much slower rate of fire, much worse accuracy and gun handling, on say like an IS-3 when you can get 360 alpha and phenomenal accuracy and penetration and good DPM and all that on a Tiger 2. And the crazy thing is if you roll high against an IS-3 and he rolls low against you, you can actually outtrade him, which with 320 alpha was a freak incident. With this thing, it's really not too far out the realm of possibilities. So, this gun now, for my money, is just sensational. 360 alpha, it hurts. You can roll for over 400, not too infrequently. And when you're shooting higher tier tanks with higher hit points, it just feels a lot better to shoot for 360 as opposed to 320. So, the buff Tiger 2 now is just great. So, um, the other thing too is this whole line is pretty solid. I talked a little bit about it, how the gun progression just felt good. You have, the tier 6 is not sensational, the 3601, but it's not bad. It has what I would consider kind of effectively the same armor as a Tiger, 100 millimeters up front, albeit kind of with the worst gun. And but it's mobile, it gets the job done. It's a tier 6 heavy, and it's not bad. Then you get to the Tiger 1, and oh man, I still remember the stock round of that thing was horrible, but yet you're rewarded with a phenomenal gun. 203 pen at tier 7 is awesome. The accuracy is great. Nowadays it also got buffed. It has 280 alpha. It's got great DPM. The machine itself, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it great, but it's actually, it could surprise you. First off, these tanks are pretty mobile. You can see me here. I'm doing over 40 kilometers an hour. And yeah, I was going downhill, and I kind of am, but going over this, I mean, I'm doing between 35 and 40. These aren't slow tanks. The E75 is included in that. They're not really slow till the E100, and E100, I'll get to that in a second, but these are pretty quick tanks. So the Tiger 1 kind of acts sort of almost like a heavium. You can get to flanks pretty quick. As long as you're not going uphill, you have good mobility, a lot of health, a lot of DPM, and then you get upgraded into this thing where the armor is just so much more usable, so much more effective. It teaches you a lot how to side scrape, how to go hold down, how to bait shots, how to hide your lower plate. Because the Tiger 1, you had to hide your whole tank. There was no lower plate. They just kind of pick and choose where to pen you. This thing gives you tools to work with, and it's really phenomenal. You can play a bit more long range. With these tanks, I will say if you're top tier, please don't snipe. I get it. They're accurate and they got good penetration and it comes in your mind, but these are not snipers in the way that like tank destroyers are snipers, okay? If you're a top tier heavy, like I'm kind of doing this replay, you need to get forward. You need to use your armor, your hit points, and give your team a chance on a flank. We had a pretty good push here. They actually had a decent amount of tanks you're going to see coming up here kind of in the back supporting these guys and artillery raining down. And I'm up here with our T-34, and this STA-2. And if I was on this flank, we might not have won it. I think those two tanks that are already dead would probably still be alive, and it would have taken longer. And this game, right now, this game, we're technically losing down 4% health. So we're trying to make a play here. I knew I couldn't stop. and just kind of sit here, right? We have to push in. The other flank, the enemy team's gaining ground, so we can't be the ones to just kind of sit around and let the game pass us by. Um, so but back to the line for a second. The Tiger 2 leads to the E75, which is phenomenal. Kind of hurting these days. There's a lot of high penetration, a lot of tank destroyers, a lot of premium span that really devalues armor as a whole. And that tank doesn't have great DPM or gun handling anymore. It has a very different kind of gun than this, but it's still a good tank. And then you get to the E100, and I have tried to love the tank. I understand how to play it. The issue is you need a lot of things to go right, and you could have phenomenal games. But if one thing goes wrong, such as a bad map, there's artillery, you go to the heavy flank without support, the enemy team just spams heat rounds, insert anything that could just screw up a heavy tank's game. The E100 is going to suffer from it like a dog. So a lot less flexible than these machines. It doesn't have that mobility I kind of talked about. So the whole line, I think the jewel is the Tiger 2. You could say it's the E75, and I want to call you crazy, but for my money, it's the Tiger 2. This tank, it kicks ass, man. It's a bully. It has DPM. It has pen and accuracy. Has hit points. It has the armor, and surprisingly has the mobility. So it kind of has everything you need to do well fairly consistently, and that's actually how I ended up 3-marking this thing. And I don't really chase marks. I think it's a little too stressful, to be honest, when things go wrong for me. Kudos to the guys who can consistently 3-mark and even 4-mark vehicles. I just kind of take them as they come. If I'm on a wave and I ride it to get a mark, cool, man. But I'm not sitting there trying to grind it out for hours on a play session. I can't do that. The game gets too frustrating, and it's just not worth it. So, yeah, it's good to see this tank doing well in the year 2026. We're gonna be doing a couple more vehicles. This was another tier 8 heavy tank. I'm gonna go and mix it up next video. Gonna do a medium tank. It's either gonna be, I think, one of 3 tanks. The M48 Patton, the E50M, or the T62A, right? The Patton, the E50M, there since launch, and then the T62A, not released too far after. Russia, I think, was the 4th nation introduced. It was either Russia or France. Pretty sure it was Russia. So, a lot to say about those tanks. Have a lot of good gains in those kinds of machines. Just got to go ahead and put together some good sessions where I kind of focus on to get you guys some decent games to show. But that's the end of that game. Almost 5,400 damage. Tiny bit of assisting. 4 kills. Almost 2,000 base XP there. Just pushing down the flank. And there you go, mastery game. Don't get too many of those when they come around. It feels good. It's not a it's a tank that's easy to do well in, but maybe not great. So, yeah, that's about it for the video. Just go and leave your guys' thoughts on the Tiger 2, and if you guys have any requests for kind of OG tanks, let me know. If I got them, I'd love to sit down and talk about them. So, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys take care of yourselves, and we'll talk soon.